Welcome to Upticks with Jake Falcon, founder and CEO of Falcon Wealth Advisors. In this podcast, we help high net worth individuals overcome financial complexities. We do this by enhancing financial literacy and discussing topics in a language free from industry jargon. Join us as we help explain exactly what having a solid financial plan means, as Jake draws from years of experience in helping hundreds of individuals get financially organized and focused on their goals. We hope you find Upticks educational, entertaining, and shareable. Now, on to the show.
Welcome back to the show. This is episode 237, Good Money Habits, Part 2. Corey, thank you for joining me back on the show.
Hello, Jake. Thanks for having me.
And we're back to our normal deal here, Corey. No guest this week. But, we wanted to actually share from a viewer / listener a really good money habits that they've used throughout their life. And I thought that'd be awesome to share on today's episode. So last week we had pro golfer Chase Hanna on. That was a really fun show. Really excited for Chase as he progresses, in his pro golfer career. But today we're back to finance, Corey, and we're back to good money habits. Before we dive into today's show, though, I want to thank everyone for tuning in and listening to this either on Apple iTunes or Spotify. If you want to give us a 5-star rating or a thumbs up, or even send some comments on iTunes, that would be greatly appreciated. I think that's how more people get to hear our show. And if you're listening to this on YouTube, a simple thumbs up would also be greatly appreciated. Also, subscribing is the best way to make sure that you don't miss another episode of Upticks. So please hit that subscribe button. We're not charging for it yet, Corey. One day we may charge for this. So again, you want to get grandfathered in and subscribe now so that you don't have to pay a subscription fee. Might be a great idea. What do you think?
That's a great idea before the paywall goes up. Maybe.
maybe. We think our content's worthy of charging, but we're not going to do it, obviously, today. But Corey, before we go into Good Money Habits Part 2, do you have any fun things you want to share in your life personally?
Yeah, actually a fun thing personally, and with our team, Jake, on Friday, we had a team outing and we went bowling. And had a lot of fun with that. More fun than I expected, frankly. I knew it would be a good time, but really enjoyed it. I thought we had a great time.
Yeah, that was fun. We're competing internally to build up our team. We did enter the Kansas City Corporate Challenge this year for the first time ever as a company, and bowling is one of the events. And so we're very fortunate to have a collegiate bowler, Mark, on our team. Man, his form's pretty good, isn't it, Corey?
Yeah, it's impressive.
He's the real deal. And you're pretty good, Corey. I think you rolled a 170. Is that right?
I did.
Was that your high? I know we did 3 rounds. Was that your highest score?
On Friday, yes, it was.
What's your all-time highest?
Joe asked me that question, and I think that I broke 200 one time, but I don't know exactly what the score was. I just remember it being a big deal because it only happened once.
That is awesome. Good for you. I'm not... and Mark was telling me, which made me feel a little worse, actually. He said that golf and bowling actually translate pretty well. Usually good golfers are good bowlers and good bowlers are good golfers. So that was a little frustrating to hear because I think I'm a decent golfer, but I'm not a very good bowler. But hey, what are you going to do?
You said it had been about 15 years or so since the last time you bowled, right?
Yeah. It had been a long time, and I wasn't horrible. I left too many open frames is my issue. You got to knock down those spares. So... but it was a good time. You're right. We had a great time. And for me, golf season is fast approaching. I've been getting lessons from my golf instructor, which has been a lot of fun. And he's tweaked some things, and I'm finally starting to implement some of them. But, it's a lot easier to, understand and comprehend what they're telling you to do. It's actually a lot harder to apply it. But I'm starting to see some improvement in the golf ball and the flight. And so I'm real excited about that. We've made some small changes this year. And so I'm excited to see what that translates to the golf course. Okay.
Yeah, that's really good. I think that I always joke about that, Jake, on the tennis court, that strategy and execution are 2 different things. I know what I'm trying to do. It's just a matter of whether or not I can do it.
Right. Exactly. So we'll see. But that's a fun deal in here. Okay, so let's dive into today's topic. So we have 6 points of view that this individual shared with us, and I thought they were really good, Corey. And I wanted to debate them a little bit because, again, everybody's good money habits are going to be a little bit different. But hopefully our audience can take away some ideas that they can either implement, as we're talking about implementation, directly in their own lives, or maybe share with their family and friends. So I've got the list over here to the side here. So I just want to kick us off with number one, without going into great detail, but basically his point was that he graduated from college and he started working, and he bought some basic financial software, which not many people. Did you buy financial software out of college? Even though we do this for a living, like I don't know a lot of people that have done that. So good for him that he did that. And he did it to create a budget. And what he found, Corey, was that he hated spending time creating and tracking a budget because it is a little bit tedious. You either need to do it every day, every week, but it's something you certainly have to stay on top of, because you got to track all your receipts and your checks and your credit cards and your debit cards and cash, all that stuff you got to kind of account for when you're looking at a budget. So he decided that he would reward myself by not doing any budgeting and tracking, but if his net worth was better at the end of the year, then he wouldn't worry about his budget as much. So what he did is he spent time once a year calculating his net worth. And he figured, and again, this is after college, he figured if his net worth was increasing, then that meant he was budgeting appropriately. I really like this idea. What are your thoughts on this?
Yeah, I like the idea too. But I, in my opinion, what I cannot stress enough, and I don't think we'll be able to stress enough today, Jake, is that what really matters is that people find something that works for them. But I do think just framing it this way and thinking about, well, if the net worth is continuing to grow year over year, that means the budgeting is under control. I fully support keeping it simple. And I think that probably worked pretty well for him.
Right. But you're right. Doing nothing is also a choice, though. So doing nothing and having anxiety or fear and worry or being a little bit irresponsible, all that is also a choice. So again, as consumers and living in a free world, right, it is up to you to balance your budget and make sure that you're managing your money correctly. So our argument would be that you need to do something, whether, again, you're tracking it every day, every week, every month. Most of our clients don't have a budget, Corey, which is fine. And I kind of like this idea, in worst case, they could meet with us once or twice a year and look at that financial plan trajectory. And if the financial plan trajectory is going in the correct direction, also that may be good enough for them. But for this individual, they're a little bit of a do-it-yourselfer. They were just tracking their net worth every year. If it was higher, they said, look, I don't need to be meticulous with my budget. I thought that wasn't a bad idea, right?
I like it.
All right, Corey, why don't you leave it with this number two for us today?
Yeah, so the second point from the same individual that he highlighted was, despite the fact that he did not enjoy budgeting, he said there was twice in his life where he tracked all of his expenses down to the penny for a year. Once being after, right after school, and another one being 5 or 6 years later after graduation. And he ultimately pointed out that he found that he spent less money when he tracked all of his expenses, and it gave better visibility to question every expense that wasn't needed. What do you think about that?
Yeah, well, I think that would work if sometimes we sit down with clients, Corey, and they'll say, I feel like I'm spending too much money. So I think if you have that issue going on and there's a sense of buyer's remorse or guilt, that may help. It's almost like, Weight Watchers does like a point system, or people that count calories or carbs or whatever you're doing. I think if you apply the same concept to money and you're tracking it, you will think twice about, splurging at Costco, or, shopping online at Amazon, or buying that, golf driver that you don't really need, right? Because you're going to have to log it and track it, and you're going to see it. So I don't think that's a horrible idea. Again, only if somebody's financial plan is in need of adjustment, or if you're having some sort of emotional difficulties. I think that would then be a useful practice to do. And maybe you don't need to do it for the whole year, right? Maybe you do it for 3 months or 6 months to kind of reframe your behavior a little bit and understand where your money's going. So I don't think it's a horrible idea.
I think it's interesting, though, Jake, that you made the analogy that you did, because I was thinking about this morning before we recorded the show, and I actually made some notes for myself, and I wrote down just that tracking expenses. Now, this is just for me personally, is very much like weighing in on the scale, right? In the sense that it's a way to it's just accountability, and it will force you to think twice.
Personal question here, Corey. Do you weigh yourself on a scale often, or ever?
I do.
How often?
Once a week.
Once a week?
I used to do it every day.
I do it every day, and I log it, believe it or not. And I can see a trend. I put it in my phone, and I can see a trend line if I'm. And you know what? to me, if I feel like am I trending up a little bit, and I'm not obviously bulking up with muscle here. So if I'm trending up, I realize that, hey, I may need to think twice about, going out to dinner and eating a bunch of pasta or whatever, right? Because like, hey, my weight's going in a direction that I don't really want it to. And again, we're talking like a pound or two, but because I'm tracking it every day, I am able to not let it get out of hand, which I think is pretty interesting. So the same thing could happen with your money.
Exactly. And when it comes to money, I cannot say everything's expensive. I don't know where I'm spending all my money if I'm tracking it, because it does, again, it just requires me to, that kind of just goes into what the point you made earlier, Jake, about choosing to not do anything is also a choice.
Right. Good. Let's go into number 3 here. So he comments on his third point here that he's heard, pay yourself first. And it's not entirely bad advice. He's heard of that, right? And we've talked about that a little bit on the show, I believe. But from his personal life experience, he believes that pay God first is so much more valuable. So when he puts total faith in God, such that I never question the first 10% going to charity, I found that I received the blessing of never having to worry about money. Things just miraculously worked out. And there's a lot to be said about that. And again, we're not going to switch this to a religious, undertone of our show or question anybody's faith or beliefs. But this is something that this particular individual obviously holds very important to them. It's something that they value. And, he's giving it away. And, you can call it the laws of nature, God, faith, whatever, that made him feel good, which also probably freed up some stress in his life to feel better about things and to allow other things to happen for him. So I think, we have a set of clients that believe strongly in that, and they do that. And again, there's nothing right or wrong about that. I think what the point of this one is, Corey, is aligning your values and your money, which we talk about a lot with clients, whether that's faith, or maybe it's your children, or maybe it's, paying down debt, or whatever it is that you value, and making sure that that's lined up. And that's what he's basically saying worked very well for him. So it wasn't about paying himself. It was like, hey, I value my faith very much, and I'm going to make sure I check that box first, because that's what's most important to him, which I think is awesome. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, totally agree. Again, it just speaks to the unique individualistic nature of financial planning, right? Everyone's plan and everyone's goals and objectives and priorities and values they're going to be different across the board. And from my perspective, when I was reading through this comment, the way that I took it, Jake, was really the way that you've described it, but also just prioritizing first what's most important. And frankly, the fact that what's most important is not something that's just pure consumerism. I think, just sort of helps to for him at least, probably helps to frame it in the context of, I do have my priorities aligned. I have my values in place. And I think from my point of view, when we talked about pay yourself first, while he's talking about paying God first, pay yourself first is what we talked about on the first episode of Good Money Habits here. Either way, neither of those have to do with just, consumerism and spending, but truly getting aligned with the values. And I think that's the key here.
Yes, you're absolutely right. And that's one of the main questions we ask all of our clients is, why is money important to you? Well, so this individual, it's important that he tithes or gives to God first. Awesome. What we do with our clients is we log that. We literally type that out in their financial plan so that every time we review, we can check in on those values. And I think that's very important. And again, we can list off 10 of them, 20 of them, whatever you want, right? And categorize them and list them however you want. And that's important, because then if your values are lined up with your money, it all works so much better together. Good. What's number 4, Corey?
All right. So point number 4 is my favorite one on this list, just because I could so closely relate to it. But what he said was, when I bought my first house after getting married, the temptation to spend a lot of money on furnishing the house and making changes was great. I took a simple approach of buying just one major thing each month. And if it was over $1,000, then it took up to 2 months. Again, didn't have to budget and made things simple. No, not this month, next month.
Yeah, good. And so that's really smart. Rachel and I do something very similar. We'll do it quarterly because that's how, the majority of our income is, brought in. So we'll say, okay, what's our quarter project for our home? Are we buying patio furniture? Do we want to, we did the Augusta room. What do we want to do? Do we want to do landscaping? But again, we're not go. right? We understand that, hey, there's 2 or 3 things, big things we can do a year, 4 if we really went after it. What is that quarterly spend gonna be? That way we don't have to worry about racking up a bunch of credit card debt or taking out home equity lines of credit. We budget it in our cash flow and it makes it much more enjoyable. What about you and Cassie, Corey?
Yeah, we take a very similar approach. But the unique nature of his point here was just the fact that we bought our house just a few years ago, and I've already experienced this firsthand. And interestingly, Cassie and I had a discussion at the end of 2022 talking about just this for 2023 and what we wanted to prioritize and what was important. And really what we agreed to was, let's just focus on living in the house and enjoying it. Let's work on a few of the maintenance items that we need to, but we don't need to undertake some large project every year, because we could do it every year forever. Maybe you get the money back, maybe you don't. It depends on when you sell the house and everything else. But I think it's just a good framework. And again, I really like his point, keeping it simple of saying, no, not this month. It has to be next month, because we've already done this. I think that implementing the same things, it's almost setting constraints or filters for yourself to just make good choices. So you don't have to give it too much thought, even when sort of the temptation to do something may pop up.
Right. And actually it gives you something to look forward to. It's like, okay, well, this month we bought a couch and next month we're going to buy a new TV or a chair. And you can kind of, plan it all out so that what's always kind of coming down the pipeline. And we've seen clients do this, with great success as well. And you just, everybody has a limit. And I've been telling this to clients lately. Even Elon Musk, believe it or not, has a limit on what they can spend, and you don't want to overdo it, and you don't want to rack up a bunch of debt when you can just compartmentalize things and plan a little bit, and then you can still get all those things without making some bad investment decisions. So that's good. All right, let's go into number 5 now. He said he read a small book from another financial firm his first year out of college, and one thing they stressed was the power of compounding and of time, right, which is part of compounding. He decided that he would rather save less total money, but earlier, rather than having to save more money later, and maxed out tax-deferred retirement contributions as a result. So again, good for him, right? He understood and learned early on the benefits of compounding. I think a lot of young people get this wrong, Corey. They want to, or even some of our clients, they want to pay off all of their student loan debt before they start saving for retirement. Or they want to pay off their mortgage, then they're going to save for retirement. And the reality is all that does is put them behind in saving. And we can run the math and the calculations, but the idea is that if you save early and often and that money grows, compounding is when money grows on top of itself. And I think it was Albert Einstein that said compound interest is one of the great discoveries of all mankind. Those who understand it earn it, those who don't pay it, right? So we often say this also, that you can't afford not to save in your retirement plan. So again, save early, save often. We can show you the math. It just works out that way. Again, as long as it's invested correctly and so forth. Do you have any thoughts on compound interest?
Yeah, let it work for you, not against you. And I learned very early. In fact, Jake, I don't know if you knew this, but coming up in 2 days will actually be the 13-year anniversary of when you and I started working together, Jake.
I didn't know that, Corey.
Yeah, this Friday, but March 10th. But somebody mentioned this to me very early on, and always resonated. And that was the best day to invest was yesterday, and the second best day to invest is today, which again, I think just emphasizes the power of compounding. And it's really easy to fall into the trap of saying, oh, I don't make enough money to be able to save, or I really can't prioritize saving while I have this debt that I'm trying to pay down. It's easy to do that. But as you and I both know, Jake, I've met with enough clients and have seen enough people that prioritize exactly as this person did, saving early in retirement. And that has opened up so many doors and has provided so much flexibility for later in life.
Yes. I mean, literally, Corey, between the two of us, we work with over 700 clients, which means we've had thousands of meetings with these clients over the years. And the clients that are in the best shape financially have typically started saving early in life, is how they got there. Now, occasionally you'll get a windfall or something unique will happen, but the clients that we meet with that are in the best shape, they did it early, right? They started saving early. Occasionally we'll have a client that's behind, right, that comes in and they've got to really max out things. They've got to really save and they're really behind and they've got to work until they're 65 or 70. And that's fine, right? We certainly are happy to help them get there. But it's a whole lot less stressful for that client that started in their 20s and their 30s, 20s typically, saving early and often. And they took compounding, they took advantage of compound interest. So that's really good.
Yep.
Good. What's our next one here? So we're on number 6. So the last one here, Corey.
So point number 6, the note that this person made was, I decided there was no reason to borrow money for anything other than a house. The only cars he ever bought were what he could afford with savings in the bank. The first couple of cars were pretty long in the tooth, but after a few years, the decision allowed him to buy everything after that brand new. What are your thoughts?
You know, in the Midwest, I see more people driving cars longer. I see more people not as enamored about having, the brand new BMW or, growing up in Texas, not in West Texas as much, but I feel like the Dallas area, I feel like a lot of those people typically have flashier cars and newer cars and are always upgrading, probably because they're also spending more time in their cars and commutes. Kansas City, we're pretty lucky that the commute time for most people is not a big deal. So you don't really need to have a new car because it's not as much of a priority. So I get that. I don't know if I don't know if I necessarily agree with paying cash for cars. Obviously, the interest rate environment here lately has changed. So now it may make more sense. But I would say over the last decade, theoretically, you could have borrowed money probably at a pretty low interest rate. And as long as you invested that money that you would have put into the car, you could have come out a little better. But in my experience, Corey, with cars, you're splitting hairs a little bit. And so I think really what his point is that he didn't overextend himself, and that mortgage is what's commonly considered good debt because you can typically write off some of the interest from the mortgage, whereas a car debt or credit card debt, you typically can't. And so I think there's a difference between good debt and bad debt. I think this worked for him. I think it's worked for a ton of my clients, have paid cash for cars. So I don't think it's a bad thing, but I think you're splitting hairs a little bit. What about you?
Yeah, no, I largely agree with that. I also think that I think in the world today as vehicles, like a lot of things, but especially vehicles have just become more expensive. It's probably more difficult for a lot of people. Like I've talked to people at the car dealership, more and more people get 6, 7, 8-year loans when they're buying a car. But I think that having some of these good money habits in place and everything that we've talked through here today, I think it really probably starts with what do I want to drive and how important is that to me? And then how do I want to pay for that? The answer might be different from person to person, but at least starting there helps sort of frame how critical it is or is not to you in your situation to drive a nice car, a nice new fancy car, to drive a used practical car. Again, find what works for you. But I don't think, I do think it's probably more of a challenge for people to buy cars today, cash, than it may have been if we, even adjusting for inflation, a few decades ago, the cars have just gotten more expensive.
Yeah, that's a really good point. They are a little bit pricier, but again, you got to think too, what are you going to do with that money? So if you have a car payment, but you're going to invest that money and grow it, that's not a bad idea. But sadly, most people don't do that. They'll have a car payment and they'll spend the money. So I think that's where his argument was, is like he paid cash, so he didn't pay interest to anybody. And again, ultimately though, I think the key takeaway here is though, you want to plug either decision in a financial plan and see what the implications are for either option A, pay cash, or option B, finance it, and at least know what's going to happen. So, we're not here to tell you how to feel or what your emotional reaction should be. I can't control that. That's completely a personal thing. And we want to embrace that and accept that. We are here though, to help tell you financially the impact it's going to have. I'll give you a quick example. I have a client recently paid off a mortgage, even though the interest rate was very low. And the reason is this client's approaching retirement, Corey. They had the means to pay it off and they didn't want to have debt. That was just something that was causing them anxiety. We ran the plan and showed, the husband and wife, the implications, which to them were somewhat insignificant. And so we said, okay, so we're showing you the math. You're saying it doesn't matter. Then you should really do what makes most sense for you and what's going to make you feel the best. And that's what they did. And to us, that's okay. Right. And so that's why you hire Falcon Wealth Advisors. That's why you work with a fiduciary wealth advisor who's going to show you the math, always give you, the advice that's in your best interest, and then help you make an informed decision. That's really what it boils down to.
Yep.
I thought this was another good episode. So, we gave some great, in my opinion, good money habits at our last show, but you can just see the nuance and how you can tweak things. And like you mentioned early in today's show, Corey, that everybody is a little bit different and it is individual. The key, though, is that you don't want to just ignore money. You don't want to disrespect it. You want to understand it, set up a system that works for you and your family, and then certainly lean on your friends at Falcon Wealth Advisors to help give you some good advice, guidance, and help you crunch the numbers and run the plan. All right, as we wrap up today's episode, Corey, is there anything else for parting comments?
Yeah, just one question for you, Jake. Do you personally have just one money habit that you think works really well for you, or that you're the most proud of, that just is most effective for you in your life? I know I'm putting you on the spot here.
Yeah, we spend less than we make. And I think that's been a good money habit for us, is that, we never overextend ourselves. And I think another one is that Rachel and I have open, honest conversations about money. And we don't let it be a situation for an argument. Well, if money is, because again, everybody has their limit. If we have a limit, then we talk about the pros and cons of it and what we both feel comfortable with, and we make the decision. And regardless, if one of us is, getting what we want or not getting what we want, we understand that we move forward together. But I think that's key. What about you, Corey? That's a good one. You threw me on there, but that's probably ours, is we spend less than we make.
Yep, that's good. And that's good advice for most people. For me, Jake, I think that I was thinking about this before the show today, and sleeping on it has always been a very useful, that's always been useful before making any major financial decision. Just creating some space or distance between the choice itself and making it. And just, taking a little bit of time to ask the questions of, is this important? Is this how I want to spend money? Is this aligned with my values? I think that just the concept of sleeping on it is really useful for that.
Yeah, I like that one. That's hard to do, by the way.
It is.
Especially if you really want something. If you really want that driver, Corey, or that tennis racket, or your wife wants something, you're going to tell her, just wait. That's not easy to do.
Yeah, maybe it's getting a little philosophical, but I also think that, frankly, just, yearning for more, for better, for someday, or when I have this or that it really can be just the enemy of contentment in the here and now.
Yeah, good point. That is pretty deep there. All right. Well, thank you as always, Corey, for joining me on today's episode. I know we do have to wrap up here. Thank you all as always for tuning in. Please make sure, again, that you subscribe to Upticks. We are bringing more guests on the show, so we're real excited about that. Alyssa, our communications director, is going to be busy on lining all of that up. Thank all of you again, and we hope you have a great week.
Thank you for listening to Upticks. Click the subscribe button to be notified when new episodes become available. Also, be sure to visit our website, falconwealthadvisors.com, and click the Contact Us button if you'd like to meet with Jake and his team.